We are deeply honored to have his presence here with us today, marking this significant occasion for remembrance of reflection of Imam Hussein's sacrifice. With respect and gratitude, I kindly extend an invitation to Julian Hill to join us on his stage and deliver his speech. Salawati bar Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello also to the sisters who are listening on the other side. Thank you for the invitation to be here, both on behalf of the Australian government as a minister, but most importantly for me as someone who represents a lot of southeast Melbourne, where most people here live. We're one of the most diverse places, not just in Australia, but anywhere in the world, with people from all different ethnicities, cultures, hundreds of different languages, and over 100 different faith traditions. And I acknowledge the importance for Muslim Australians of the month of Muharram, the first month in the Islamic calendar, and in that sense a new beginning, but particularly for Shia Muslims, a time to commemorate, to remember, and to take lessons from, not just to remember and reflect, but to take the lessons from the martyrdom of Imam Hussain, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and son of Imam Ali. We also, in this part of Melbourne, have the largest community of people who were born in Afghanistan. And I've got two staff who work in my office, who are Shia, who over the years have explained to myself and the other staff, their fellow Australians who are not Muslim, the profound spiritual significance of Muharram. And I'll make a few remarks, but one thing that I'd really encourage you, and I think it's absolutely important in modern Australia, that we have gatherings where people can share their cultural traditions with the next generation, with young Australians who do anything they want in this country, but who also need to understand and be proud of their ancestral identity and know their parents and where their families came from. Young Australians live in those two worlds, and that's a good thing. But it's also important that we share some of our traditions with other Australians who might not be of our faith. And the plains of Karbala echo with a timeless message. You don't have to be Muslim to understand this and get something from these lessons of justice, of freedom, of truth, of human dignity, and a steadfast resistance against tyranny. When we think about resisting tyranny, I'm reminded how lucky we are to live in Australia, where we, adult citizens, get to vote to choose our governments. We can elect a good government, we can get rid of a bad government. And even governments in our country, even government ministers, still have to follow the law. But we can't take that for granted. When you look around the world, still today, most people don't enjoy the freedoms and the rights that we enjoy in Australia. Most people in the world are oppressed by their governments. They don't get to choose their governments. They live in various forms of tyranny. And through the writings of scholars, if you want to connect with other Australians, there's a few quotes that I'll just give you now. Some of you will have heard these before, that help connect to non-Muslim Australians some of the lessons and what an important historical figure Imam Hussain was, even for non-Muslims. Two of the greatest figures, in my view, of the 20th century, Mahatma Gandhi, who led peaceful, non-violent resistance to British colonial rule in India, and perhaps the greatest man in the 20th century, in my view, Nelson Mandela, who led the struggle in South Africa for decades against white apartheid, another form of oppression and tyranny. Mahatma Gandhi said, "I learned from Hussein how to achieve victory while being oppressed." Nelson Mandela, I visited Robben Island off Cape Town and seen the rock cave where this incredible man was imprisoned for nearly 20 years. He said, "I've spent more than 20 years in prison. Then on one night, I decided to surrender by signing all of the terms and conditions of the government. But suddenly I thought about Imam Hussain and the Karbala movement, And Imam Hussain gave me strength to stand for right, for freedom and liberation, and I did. I was a Hindu and a Christian that could still take inspiration from the story and the martyrdom of Imam Hussain. The religious dimension, there's a famous Scottish historian and philosopher, Thomas Carlyle, who once said, I quote, "The best lesson which we get from the tragedy of Karbala is that Hussain and his companions were rigid believers in God. They illustrated that numerical superiority does not count when it comes to truth and falsehood. The victory of Hussain, despite his minority, marvels me." And so any human being, any Australian, even non-Muslims, can take something from a timeless story of 72 people sacrificing their own lives. 6-month-old baby, people in their 70s, all the way through lifespan, sacrificing themselves for a cause greater than themselves and something that they believed in. And the story of Bibi Zainab, I was just at a Muharram gathering earlier where they had a sermon in English, which was wonderful for someone like me to actually hear more of the lessons and be able to think about that in my native language, English, because I'm not clever, I don't speak Farsi or Dari or Urdu or Pashto or any of the languages that your communities can speak fluently. But Bibi Zainab, Imam Hussein's sister, who stood with unshakable strength, despite witnessing what all of us would hope is an unimaginable loss, the martyrdom of her brother, her 2 sons and other family members. She did not break, she did not yield, she stood tall. As I heard that story, I actually thought of many people in our community who tragically have suffered similar losses in the tragedy that is modern Afghanistan, losing family members, losing loved ones, seeing loved ones killed, and the incredible strength and resilience that so many Australians here who've endured that tragedy but still go on with their lives in a positive way display. It's impressive. She said, "Oh my Lord, accept our humble sacrifice to you." And she faced Yazid's court without fear, without hesitation, with the grace and dignity given by her faith. Moz in my office explained to us this week that her sermon in Yazid's court stands as one of the most powerful moments in Islamic history. With unwavering defiance, she declared, "By God, you cannot remove us from the minds of people, and you cannot fade our message. You will never reach our glory, and you can never wash the stain of this crime from your hands." So I'll finish where I started. You don't have to be of the Muslim faith to hear those words, to hear those lessons echo down the centuries to all of us today and reflect on their meaning. It's a reminder of the power of faith for those who believe, but of resilience, of standing for what is right no matter the cost, of doing your duty, however you conceive that. The story of Karbala is not bound by time and it's not confined to one community. So where you can, in the days ahead, can I tell you, and you may experience this elsewhere, Australians, of course, as I said, are diverse. An Australian to me is anyone who's committed to our country, it is our country, but to respect for their fellow Australians who may be very different. They may live very different lives, they may have different beliefs. Some of the way they live their lives may conflict with your beliefs. But that principle of mutual respect for our fellow Australians is so important. But Australians are also really curious about each other, but we often don't ask. Well, you see gatherings and you think, so why are they doing that? Well, if you can, take a moment to share some of that story of Imam Hussain and your traditions with your neighbours and your workmates, because they're really happy to learn it. I enjoy learning, and I do that with a sense of humility and respect. So thank you very much. It really is a privilege to represent you in the Parliament, and I wish everyone, well, it's not a happy Muharram, but a Muharram that's filled with genuine reflection and reverence, where you can pass on some of those lessons and feel renewed as you enter the new Islamic year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Mr. Julian Hill for his appearance and attendance in this occasion. خب سلامات بر محمد و